Welcome to the Empathic Mastery Show. I'm your host, Jennifer Moore, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a place where we talk about what it means to be highly sensitive and empathic, how this impacts all aspects of our lives, and we explore tools, resources, and solutions so we can shift from absorbing all the thoughts, feelings, and energy of the world around us to being beacons for calm, love, and healing. Hey there, everybody. I'm back, and I'm really excited to be bringing my guest, Francelyn Devarie, today. We first connected on her awesome podcast, Life with Francie, and we really clicked. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I totally have to bring you on a podcast, which is one of the wonderful things about being on podcasts and with other podcast hosts, because often they're so awesome and it's really fun to exchange places. But enough about all that. So Francelyn Devarie is originally from Puerto Rico. She lives in Kansas, and she's a mail lady during the day and a podcaster at night. She's a dreamer, an empath, and a mental health advocate. Francie's mission in life is to help others who have struggled like she has. She understands how trauma or mental health issues impact feeling like you belong. That's why she created her own podcast to create a place where we can talk about mental health, self-love, self-care, trauma, hobbies, and more. Francie loves sharing tools and resources that have helped her become the woman she is today, with less anxiety, less anger, less breakdowns, in hopes that it will help somebody else. Francie loves to build communities of people who support one another in business and personal life. Francie, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
Oh, I am just delighted to have you here. And, you know, we were talking before about just like starting with the conversation of like, what was it like for baby empath Francie? You know, and you were saying like you were supposed to be born in Puerto Rico, but you were born in the Bronx instead. And so obviously, like you've been somebody who has lived between different worlds pretty much from the get-go. So let's talk about like the early experience. Like, did you know that you were more sensitive than other people? Like, at what point did you realize like, oh, I'm not necessarily quite like the other kids?
No, and I wish I had known, because I would have been nicer to myself and others. I was fighting a lot of anger and a lot of big emotions. I did have a great childhood, but I grew up with 24 cousins. So it was crazy at all times. And my
You
mom,
grew up with 24 cousins. And were you guys like in the same neighborhood? Were you in the same house? Were you in the same building? Like, how close were you?
Yes. So that was my mom's side of the family. And I grew up with her in a neighborhood that started with like 10 houses, and now it has like 60 houses. So it's like 5 generations of 3 to 5 families in this neighborhood. So it's houses on top of houses, next to houses. And wow. I had 24 cousins just from my mom's side. And then I have 3 sides, which is my mom, my dad, and my biological fathers. So my mom and my dad's are huge. So they're like 50 cousins in between both of the families. So it was at least 10 kids at all times through my childhood.
Wow. And so like, as a sensitive, as an empath, like being surrounded by that much emotional, mental, physical energy, like 24/7, I can't even imagine. Like it was hard enough being in my family of 5. I think I'm just thinking like, I'd have to do the count, but I've got a fair number. I think I might have a total of 20 or 25 cousins or something, but like, cause like my mom and dad both come from fairly big families, but I can't even imagine what it would be like to be around 10 kids all the time.
Yeah, and I just wish I had, and I'm an only child. So as an only child, it's known out there that we like to step back and deal with our emotions on our own. I didn't know that. I wish I had known back then that I needed to detox from all the energies, because as an empath, if you're sad, I'm sad. If you're happy, I'm happy. So having all those emotions coming in 24/7 and not having time to detox from it was a lot for a child.
Well, and I don't usually look at astrology charts before I start a podcast, but as you're talking, I'm like, your chart shows that. Like how we looked at everything is concentrated in the house of family and like the house of personal growth. Like, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. And the fact that you're an only child, that idea of how I was saying, how so much of all of your stuff is down below the horizon. Of course, like not only is it an only child trait to need to take that space and kind of process it and get a sense of it, but it's like literally encoded. It's like wired into your chart that you're going to need a lot of space and a lot of like room to process it internally before you could process it externally. So what a challenge here's your nature, only child, highly sensitive empath, bombarded by crazy cousins all the time.
Yeah, but it was amazing. I can't lie. Like, I love it. I love my family. My mom is the baby of 11 kids. And
Wow.
then my dad is, I think they're 9 or 10 siblings as well.
Wow.
And then my biological father is an only child, but he has huge family as well. So I know of that. So like I said, like a lot of personalities, and I just wish the tools that I have now, I had it back then, because then my childhood would have been a lot different from all the emotions.
Don't we wish? I mean, I think this is, it's almost like I know very few empaths who wouldn't say exactly the same thing, just because, and I'm wondering, like almost everybody I talked to when they were kids, they were told they were too sensitive, that they were taking it too personally, that they were overreacting. Why are you like, you need to develop a tougher skin? Was that some of the messages that you were getting about being the sensitive kid you were?
Well, if you add religion on top of that.
Okay, let's add religion on top of that.
I might have been called that I had a lot of demons growing up, and they might have done exorcisms of me. And then for me to find out that they were just praying over me, but with a little bit of oil. So, which I appreciate all those prayers now, but it's a lot for a child mentality.
How old were you the first time somebody decided to perform an exorcism on you?
When they started praying, I was baptized by like 9 different religions. Like I have been in every single religion because my mom didn't have one. Because I have such a huge family. It was like whoever took me to church on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, my mom will send me.
Wow. So you've been baptized 9 times.
Yes.
And then, I'm imagining you are an emotional kid trying to process things. And you are probably like, you certainly are full of energy now. I imagine you are a very energized and like enthusiastic kid as well. So, but I'm also thinking like, if you don't know any better, if they're telling you that they're doing an exorcism to get the demons out of you, like, how old were you? Like, were you 3? Were you 5? Were you 7?
I can start it was after I met my biological father for the first time. So I'm going to say like 10 or 11. Ooh. It was when that anger was starting to come out.
And the hormones are starting to rage as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's that. Oh, yeah, PMS. Wow. And so I know that you have that perspective now, but I can also imagine just how scary it must have been when you were that age to have these adults like putting like anointing oil on you and praying over you.
It was just lonely. I wished I had the relationship that I have with my mom now back then, because back then she was influenced. I can't be mad at her. She has 5 sisters and they're older than her. So they
Mm-hmm.
all have a different perspective and a different lesson that they want to give her. And it's not to her 50s that she's like, I'm a grown woman with an awesome daughter and an awesome marriage. What are you talking about? So it's now that she has that self-confidence to be like, I built an amazing foundation in my family. You can't tell me now anything. But when I was growing up, she would take advice from everybody instead of just having the communication with me.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm really hearing like there was so much influence of all of these different people constantly in terms of both energetically, emotionally, like as an empath, that you were being deeply impacted by everybody's feelings. But then on top of it, there's also all of this like influence of the adults telling your mom what she should be doing and how she should be raising you. And so you just had it coming and going.
Yeah, from everywhere.
Yeah.
So like I thrive in chaos, which I don't want to claim it anymore, but sadly that has been my life.
Well, I mean, if you are, I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today about whatever we experience, we're raised in, we just assume that that's the normal reality. And so, like, if you're being planted in chaotic soil, then of course you're going to be like, this is just the way it is to grow. And, like, this is what it is. And it's only when we get exposure to something, an alternative, that we start to be like, oh, maybe this doesn't have to be this way. But like, why wouldn't we thrive in chaos if that's the only thing that we know?
Mm-hmm.
Or at the very least, grow in chaos.
Just not too long ago, my mentor was like, she made a post of like, you don't have to hurt in the healing, or the healing doesn't hurt, or something like that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is me right now. Just because I'm healing, like I can't take the easy road. I still like bump into the wall because that's what I know. Like I know I have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough, but it's not necessary all the time.
No, it is not. Well, and with the EFT that, you and I've talked about before, that's the beautiful thing with EFT is that we can do it in a way that is so gentle that we don't have to go through that breakthrough. But I mean, this is such a paradigm shift because forever it's been no pain, no gain. The only way out is through. You got to drag yourself through, like you got to relive it. You got to work through it, like all that attitude, and so certainly like it's understandable why you would be like, okay, I gotta push it. I also think for a lot of us, if we've been around a lot of energy and a lot of chaos, like, if you've ever heard about people who move from being in the big city or a big city where they've got like, like light pollution and like traffic noises 24/7 and all of that intensity. And you go out into the country where it's really quiet and like, all you hear is like crickets or something like that. I've heard people say it's really disconcerting and really uncomfortable to go from this level of noise and chaos and intensity to going to that stillness because you're just not acclimated to it.
Yeah, that is true. Last year was my first time looking for peace.
Yeah.
It's a new feeling.
And so let's talk about that. So deciding to look for peace, like, I mean, everybody's just like, oh, just choose peace, just choose calmness. But what kind of pushback did you experience with that? Like, did you find that it was hard?
That was my word for the year because I tried to do the word of the year this year's community. So it's a little bit lower level than last year because I'm sorry, but the fourth day, January 4th, I was having a panic attack. So
of course,
do you expect anything less?
Yeah.
So that's how my year of peace started.
Yeah.
But it was a wake-up call of like, oh, okay, well, life is going to come at you no matter what. How do I find peace while I work through this? And it's having a system that you can run back to when things are like, when logic doesn't come anymore, you have to have something to help you get to where you at the sense of peace again.
Yeah. So obviously you had a panic attack 4 days into the peace experiment. What did you do? How did you
Well, I
navigate
have
it?
a survival kit for anxiety, which I just learned the other day that they're not for every single emotion that I have or diagnosis that I have, because depression have a different one. But anyways, the one for anxiety is to stop and just take deep breath, to just stop
Mm,
and try to get my nervous system to calm down. When
yeah.
that doesn't work, then it's walk it out or dance it out. You know, that Latina in
Mm-hmm.
me comes out and I need to have a dance party on my own. Of course, depending on your religious beliefs, you know, I'm asking for power from the universe, from God, from whoever you believe on. And then, or your families and friends, you know, you have to have somebody that you're like, okay, I am in the middle of the danger zone. Help me out here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just having that support. And when you can't, then you go and seek professional help.
Well, and one thing I would love to say or add as a sort of a disclaimer about seeking out friends and family is I think it's really important to choose the people who are going to support you and not gaslight you,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, and that not all family members or friends are created equal. Like some people are not necessarily the best people to go to when we need support. So, which is one of the
I
reasons why I do think sometimes a professional is a good choice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I think it's Brene Brown who said
Yeah.
that she keeps 5 people in like her pocket that she
Hmm.
calls, like she only has 5 people that,
Yes,
and even in those 5 people, not everybody has the same purpose. So it's
exactly.
just who do you call, if it's a family thing, if it's a business thing, if it's a relationship thing, you have to have your person.
Yes, exactly. It's funny. I didn't know if I heard Brene Brown say this about the 5 people, it went in one ear and out the other. But instinctively, I have always had 4 to 5 people who are my like ride or die buds, that
Mhm.
are the people that I go to when I know I need something. And yeah, I've got 5. Just thinking about it, there are 5 people on my list, like that are the ones
Yeah.
that if I'm in trouble, they're the ones I check in with. And I will think about like which of these people is the person who can support me through this thing. So,
Yeah.
which I think is a really helpful
And
thing.
if you find some of your listeners who don't have that community, starting with a hobby is a great way to meet adults. I have sticker meetups, journal meetups, all kinds of meetups. So it's a way to find other people by something that you like in common.
Yeah. 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 I'm very active in a prayer community. And that's one of the places where I know I can go to like drink from the well and get the
Mm-hmm.
support that I need. Yeah. Well, and so you mentioned that you get to deal with anxiety, and that the very first step with anxiety is just stop and take a breath. I mean, what wisdom is right there? Just stop and take a breath. And then you're also saying, like, just go for a walk or move your body, like put on some music and dance, which makes total sense too, because it's like part of the problem with our modern culture is that we don't move our body to work out the stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so our body just keeps on coursing with like cortisol and stress hormones. But if we move our body, we can move, like we can discharge it. So
Yeah.
right there, put on the music. But I loved how you mentioned that you deal with anxiety, and then you also are dealing with depression. And I always love that kind of like those of us who are like the anxious depressive axis, where
Yeah.
it's kind of like you're wired and tired at the same time.
It
You're like
is.
scared and blue all the time.
And it
Yeah.
wasn't until depression came unvisited that I realized that the survival kits are different, because
Uh-huh.
I tried the same that I do for anxiety, but it was not working. So then for depression, it's more of like I'm the queen of pity parties, and they used to last for 2, 3 weeks or months. Now it's more of like I allow myself to feel the feeling. Sometimes I cry, and what I learned is that your body stops because you become exhausted. So I have cried till I'm exhausted. I have a stomach ache. I got my face, it hurts from all the crying. So it's like, let it all out, feel the feelings, get up, wash your face. If you can't handle that more than that, then go back to bed. Sooner or later, you're gonna get up because you're gonna feel hungry. So it's like you allow yourself to feel the feelings, but sooner or later, you're like, okay, this is it. So now I allow myself from 30 to an hour, 30 minutes to an hour. And then after that, I have to move forward. I have to look for something else. But this couple of weeks, depression has shown up again. So it's more of like, take it easy.
Yeah.
Know that your feelings are validated. And if you have to write yourself a letter, then depression for me is more journaling because I have to get those feelings out. Anxiety, I don't even have time to grab a journal because I'm in the danger zone.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just like, yeah. And whereas for you, that processing of depression is a lot more of a deeper, introspective, like it's almost like, it feels to me, I don't know if this is true for you, but the sense I get is like anxiety is all up in the head and it's all kind of like, and depression is more of like in the body. And so it's like, you just have to let it be expressed and let it be acknowledged.
Yeah, because when you don't suppress it, then anger shows up. And what I learned, like when it's anger that shows up, there's always something behind it. And it's sadness or another emotion. But usually for me, in my case, has been sadness that I was not allowing myself to feel the feelings. So anger showed up and just took over my life. And nobody, like when the mental health diagnosis came in, nobody should be Francie angry.
Well, and you were saying that even at the age of like 11, 11, 12, sort of when people started to exercise your demons, that it was manifesting like your emotional intensity and your empathic overwhelm was manifesting as anger. So was that at that point in time really kind of the mask of sadness for you?
Yes.
Because you were saying you were very lonely.
At the age of 9, I met my biological father and he just busted my bubble. So I was in this little box and it was all pretty. And my mom had all the wonderful things that you can imagine a child can have. And then he came in and crushed that and then left. So it's like I didn't need to meet him at 9 years old like that. And then at 10 years old, I found out that he has a son. So I wanted a sibling because my cousins have siblings. So then it was the anger of like, oh, so you're going to fight for him, but you're not going to fight for me. You're not going to make sure that we have a relationship together. That was a lot for a 10-year-old.
A lot for a 10-year-old. And was he an older brother or a younger brother?
Younger brother. I was 10 years old when he was born.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah. So like you're witnessing this man behaving in a way that like you could only wish that he would have behaved for you and would have, as you said, you wished he would fight for you. Yeah.
Yep. But I am glad that he did it. Because he recognized that I was better with my mom. And even though she's almost perfect, that almost is in caps, she did an amazing job raising me and creating an awesome foundation for me to become an adult. And have that backup from her. Because if I would have grown up with him, it would have been bad.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting how as adults, we can look at things that we really thought was like such a disappointment or such a betrayal or such a like, that was so wrong when we're children. And then as adults, we're like, thank you, God. I didn't have like that did not happen. Because
I came to live with him when I was 15. And thanks to him, I have a PhD in every single type of abuse. So, so it wasn't my best season living with him. And then getting out of not living with him, it took me 10 years to become the woman that I am today after dealing with all the trauma and healing and loving myself and all kinds of stuff.
Hey, 10 years? I mean, that is a split second compared to so many people. I mean, 10, like that's just an amazing road to recovery. Well, and I know, without like sugarcoating it or being all Pollyanna about it, I know that there gets to be that point for many of us where we can be grateful for the PhDs that we got that are like the hard PhDs, because it allows us to be where we are today. And I'm sure like Life with Francie as a podcast would not exist, probably, at least in the form that it's in, if you had not gone through that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my purpose in life, just because I felt alone for so long. Even with a huge family, I still felt alone because their views in life and mine, they love the Puerto Rico life, and no shame in their game, because Puerto Rico is gorgeous and they're relentless and they love that life. And like having kids young, having marriage young, and I'm the opposite of all of that. So, so I can appreciate that. I can appreciate the culture and everything that was instilled in me. And now that helped me to move forward and help others to see, hey, I went through it as well. This is the stuff that I can help you. Give tools and resources that help me. And podcasting was like one of the biggest things to help me.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I absolutely love about podcasting is the fact that it is one of the few places where it feels to me like there are really real conversations going on here. Not all podcasts are created like that. You certainly have got like a whole bunch of slick podcasts where people are just like, let me tell you about how awesome I am. But like this movement of women who are podcasting with each other and speaking the truth, like there is something so powerful about sharing each other's stories. I know for me, like I learn so much from every story I get to hear. And I'm imagining that's true for you as well with your podcast. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I just had the interview that's going to come out a few months later. And she went through a lot. And I was like, girl, you had me at trauma. Like how you said that, I want to know everything about you and how you keep your smile and joy, because we need that motivation, especially for those that are in their darkest days. Thank God mine was over a decade ago. And now the problems that I bring to myself is pretty much because I brought it to myself. Because now I have a little bit more opportunities and more wisdom and knowledge on how to move forward for the life that I want to live.
Yeah, I'm just really thinking about what an incredible blessing and also what a testament to you and your tenacity that you're here instead of still just spinning your wheels and stuck. So I want to go back to just kind of like the fact that like, so how did you end up living with your dad? Like what happened? Were you like, Mom, I'm done. I want to go with me. Like, was it one of those, like, what happened?
At 14 years old, my mom thought that the best idea was to marry me because I had had sex for the first time. And she just thought that that was the solution to the problem that was non-existent, but it's just because of part of the culture. And well, I don't want to say the culture because I met somebody from a different town and she was like, that wasn't happening in my town.
Yeah. But in your immediate culture, in that
small neighborhood, like I have family members that haven't gone to the other side of the island because they're just within 4 towns radius. So it's just when you don't leave your town, your beliefs becomes real. You don't know what's outside of the world. So in part of the family, it was like an unvirgin daughter needed to be married because you wasn't going to disrespect my household.
And you were 14.
So hard. I promise I love her.
I know, I totally get it. I mean, it's like, but also like, you've got this angry, frustrated 14-year-old who is like expressing her loneliness and her depression through acting out with anger. And she has sex. It's like, I can understand how a mom could be, and especially if she's being advised by people who are older and where that's just what that's just what you do is like, it's like, you got to be married if you're going to have sex.
Respect is a huge thing in my family foundation.
Yeah.
So I can't be mad at her because I was being disrespectful in her own room. So she had some rules I didn't follow through. It is what it is. So once the marriage didn't work out, which of course wasn't going to work out.
Thank God.
I called my biological father, who was a stranger. I was like, hey, stranger, it's your turn. So I came over here and I finished high school in Maryland. So for the first 3 years, I was in Maryland and it was cool. Like over there, it was cool. It was never a father-daughter relationship, but we were cool best friends. So
wow. So if I understand, you were born in the Bronx, but then you ended up back in Puerto Rico until you were about 14 years old.
Yeah. So between 0 to 10, I was between Puerto Rico, Brooklyn, and the Bronx in New York.
Wow. But in a very insulated, very specific community. Like, so
yes,
you were
just
kind
with
of
family.
very cultural bubble.
Yes. I just knew my family and that's just the way it is. It is very known in Puerto Rico where half of the family members will be in the mainland, which is the United States, instead of being in Puerto Rico because we're citizens. So half of us we can't, there's like 4 million of people in Puerto Rico. We can all live there because there's like 30 million of us.
Wow.
We all
not quite enough space. Yeah, you guys would be busting at the seams.
Come out. So it's very normal to be in between the mainland and Puerto Rico. And then at 15, I just came over here and I never looked back. Like we look at it now, which in August is 20 years this year that I left Puerto Rico. And it's just crazy to think about. I got on that plane and because as a kid, like I always knew what was best for me, even if it wasn't. Even the worst thing, it was still the best thing that could happen in my life, if that makes any sense.
I think so. I think what I'm hearing you say is that you had a guidance system within you that was directing you to where you needed to go. And even if it ended up being an ordeal, it was ultimately what led you to where you needed to be now. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, you've been in this very, very particular cultural bubble with a whole bunch of rules that sounds like didn't necessarily fit your personality.
Not at all.
But it was a loving, safe place at the same time. And then all of a sudden, it's like you get on a plane at the age of 15 years old, which that's a story unto itself. And you go to Maryland, which is like, I can only imagine the culture shock.
It was, but for the first year, I was in an English as a second language school. In the ESL program. So it was interesting to me to meet other people from South America and see all the things that we have in common and all the things that we're different. So it was awesome. Then the following year, they sent me to an American school because I always had I don't know why I thought that I was dumb. I was not dumb. I was always in the honor program, but it wasn't until middle school that boys became more important than my grades. But
funny how that works.
Yeah. So I came to that ESL program, and at the end of the year, they have a test to see where your English is at. So if you go to a regular school or you stay, and I only stayed a year on that program and they sent me to an American school, that was crazy to me. The first time that I went to my friend who is white, and they were eating dinner in different rooms from different fast food restaurants. I was like, what? That was my first cultural shock because dinner, you are at the table.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a choice. you are with family for meals.
Yeah, I grew up in a family that had family dinner. And like every single dinner was always family dinner. We always did family dinner at the table. And it wasn't until adulthood that I experienced this kind of like people eating, like kind of like just people doing their own meals separately. It's, and I have to say, like, we usually, like, my husband and I will eat dinner together most of the time, like pretty much most of the time, but we generally will eat on the, sitting on the couch as opposed to at a table, but at least we eat together. But yeah, it's such a weird idea of not gathering for dinner, especially that early stage.
Yeah, and just to see the freedom that the kids had. I am 35 years old. I still can't curse in front of my mom.
Good habit.
I still can't. Well, good habit. I don't want to die.
Well, but also good for you as a podcaster, because you're not going to necessarily just drop an F-bomb without thinking about it.
No, I am very respectful. There has been some guests that have warned me before the interview of like, hey, I don't like bad words. And I'm like, okay, I'll try to do my best. And then I'll be like, so you see, I was so close.
Yeah, I spent way too much time working in tattoo studios where the F-bomb is like every other word. Being surrounded by male tattooers, where it was like I grew up around, or I kind of like became an adult or like really came into my own in a very salty language environment. So you can say anything and it's not going to faze me. But
I just like the respect part.
Yeah, it is respectful. It's about meeting people where they are. I mean, in some ways, it's the same kind of respect of like honoring somebody for their pronouns, like not cussing. If that's what somebody gets really upset about, using the right pronouns is, again, like, it's just respect. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a really good painting of childhood and young adulthood and kind of coming into this and realizing like you got some recovery and stuff like that. So let's talk about the pivot. Like, let's talk about that point where it's like, you're like, this is not working for me. I need to do something different.
That was when I hired my mentor 3 years ago. And she was a sex worker. And I was like, girl, you're my girl, because I just wanted to go. I tried with therapists. I tried with a million people, but I just could not get it out. And it was just that I needed somebody to relate to my guilt and shame over things that I did, that a therapist explained it to me, that is like somebody from the military. They go over there overseas and they have to survive war. But now when you come back home, are you that person that did what it had to do to survive war? So that's pretty much, I needed somebody to relate in that sexual part. And she was the guidance for me to be able to express myself and express what was bothering me, because I was having breakdowns after breakdowns. Like, we talk about it in the past year, how different life is from the time that I hired her, because I was having breakdowns at least 5 times a day. Where now it's more like a week-to-week basis. And it's even surreal for me to be like, oh my gosh, I haven't had a breakdown in a while.
It's a pretty amazing thing when you are just so used to being in a state of emotional like distress and panic and overwhelm all the time, to suddenly realize like, wow, I have not like had a total meltdown in weeks or months, or, like, it's such a remarkable place. Yeah.
It is, to show that it's possible. And that's why I'm on a mission to show others what is possible.
Yeah. Well, and from what I'm hearing what I'm imagining is, I'm kind of reading between the lines that a lot of that there's like the intersection of like sexual trauma is a piece of what you've gotten to work through. And I think the thing about anytime we start talking about sexual abuse and sexual trauma,
it's not just in your head. I mean, it's like, it's all about your body. It's all about your power. It's all about your sovereignty. It's all about your autonomy.
Mhm.
And also, but then also the intersection of like, what does it mean to be female in this culture? And what does it mean to be sexy? And what does it mean to like please people and go along to get along and everything? I can just imagine that, like, that sounds like a whole chapter. Like,
Oh
that
yeah,
sounds like a whole other
that's a
podcast,
story
really.
for another day.
Yeah, that's a story for another
because
episode.
it is because
Yeah.
the difference between sexual and sensual.
Yes.
I have always had that confusion, and it's not till I've been tapping into my feminine energy because, of course, the way I have lived my life, my masculine energy is more activated because I came from nothing, having it all because my parents gave me all, but we did have limited resources. I worked my butt off to be able to have them covered and have myself covered, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Little by little.
Little by little, little by little. I'm so glad that you realized, like, that, 3 years ago, you went, this is not working for me anymore. I need to do something different. And you found support. I know that this is something that I think can be hard for a lot of people when it comes to finding somebody to help. How did you find this person? Like, how did you find the right person for you?
She was very comfortable talking about naughty stuff in an educational way. And I was attracted to that. And then when she shared her story, I was like, oh my gosh, do you offer coaching? Because I think that you are. So it's more of who can relate to you.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for at that time. I was in need of somebody that could be like, oh my gosh, guilt and shame is a real thing.
Yes. 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 Well, and I mean, this, like, again, this is a whole other episode and a whole other conversation, but just like the intersection between guilt and shame that is imposed on us. And then as women in our culture, like, and then, so like the guilt and shame we just take on that isn't even ours necessarily, is just like, it's like the mask. We're told you are going to feel guilty and ashamed because you did this thing, even if there was nothing wrong with it. And then also like that empath thing of like feeling other people's guilt and shame. And like, you're just swimming in all of this guilt and shame.
Yeah, it was really hard. And for real, I think it's been like 6 months, 9 months that I have worked on releasing that. And I finally feel free of it. So I'm brand new to this journey of not feeling guilt and shame and responsibility that didn't belong to me.
Yes, yes, yes. So in terms of like just that finding the right person for you, you were saying that like you listened and it was the person that that really resonated with you, that you were like, I'm going to find out if this person is a coach or is a mentor, is a healer who can help me. And you went from there. So
yep,
I mean,
I worked with her, and then it was awesome to see the journey when it was like, oh, okay, well, now she helped me in that part. And now I'm looking for more help on the business side than I am of my trauma. And that's just beautiful because I just didn't think that I was going to get here. I thought that I will forever be looking for help for trauma. And it's not like it's like I'm healed and nothing is going to trigger me and nothing like that. No, this is a everyday process. But now, instead of being triggered and acting out for a week or two after the trigger, I can be like, oh, hi, trigger. I see you. What's up? What's the problem? What's the root of it? Let's just make sure that next time you come around, I don't react the same way.
Oh, so beautiful. I just love the way that you are approaching your mental health and approaching your self-awareness with so much love and compassion, and just really where you're like, oh, here you are again. Hi there. Let's do something different next time. And just really like that compassion towards the triggers is such an important part of it.
Yeah, and I was able to give myself that after my year, last year doing my mental health evaluation, where I could put a name on it. And it's not the label because I don't want to like embrace it and be like, oh yeah, this is no, it's not what it is. But like it helped me to see that if my bestie had the same mental health diagnosis, I will treat her a lot nicer than I treat myself. And I will have different expectations from her than I do about myself. Because when it comes to myself, I'm very hard and I'm like, oh, you should be in a different place and you should be doing this and doing that. But at the end of the day, I am dealing with a lot just in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I need to like take that and put it in a journal like I usually do for brain dumps and things like that to detox and really see what the issue is.
Yeah. Well, and that self-love, that merciful compassion towards ourselves when we're really in it, like when we're, instead of just beating ourselves up more or be like, you should not be having this thing. Like I have an example of this during the beginning of the pandemic. One of the person that I know had been like her, both of, which is so true for so many parents, but both of her kids basically went from being in school like 25 hours a week or more to suddenly being home. Like actually, I think the kids were away like 30 hours a week. They're out of the house. She was working from home and she was spending 25 hours like a week. So 5 hours a day working. All of a sudden the kids are like there and she is forced to homeschool. And on top of it, it was early, she ended up getting COVID and ended up with long COVID symptoms. And the thing was, as the outsider, I could absolutely see how everything had changed. And she needed to just be really kind to herself because she no longer had like 30 hours a week that she could get shit done. But internally, what she was doing was just beating the crap out of herself because she wasn't able to do the things that she had been able to do before. And I think that that's the thing when it's like, sometimes if we can get that, like, no, you've been through a lot. You're struggling with a chemical depression, or you're struggling with an anxiety disorder, or you're struggling with like being, with neurodiversity, like with ADHD diagnosis or something. Like, instead of just like constantly trying to expect ourselves to behave like the ordinary person, like the person who's not dealing with any of these things, to treat ourselves with grace and mercy and compassion and just be like, yeah, boo, it's been hard. Like, let's cut you a break here.
Yep. I am always saying, give yourself grace.
Yeah.
I just learned about that like a year or two ago, and I embrace it because it's really hard out there. And if we treat each other with love, kindness, and grace, we can be better for other people as well.
We totally can. So as I told you, I was going to say, there's that, oh my goodness, Francie, I cannot believe how fast this conversation has gone by, and we are hitting that top of the hour mark. Is there anything that you are like, if I don't say this, I am going to be really bummed?
Just journaling. I don't know. That's what saved me and rescue me from everything. So when you can't just do anything, just write yourself a letter.
Well, and you
like
have a journal,
somebody, a friend.
You created a journal, didn't you?
Yeah, right now the online store is shut down because of Amazon KDP, so we're switching it. So I hope to have it open soon. But that journal was in a season that I was looking for outside validation. And it just brought the energy back to me, which is the 3 things that are important to me, not the to-do list, is that it's important to me to do today. And then something that I'm grateful for, something that I'm proud of, something that I dream of, and something that I pray for. So just giving everything that you need in every aspect.
Could you repeat the topics that you...
Yeah, like the 3 things that are important to me.
So 3 things that are important to you.
Something that I'm grateful for.
Something that you're grateful for.
Something that I'm proud of.
Something that you're proud of.
Something I dream of.
Something you dream of.
And something that I pray for, depending on your religious beliefs.
Yeah, and something
it can be
that you
just a
pray
positive
for.
thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, wonderful. So, Francie, one of the things that I really love to do with each podcast is go back in time, because I really believe, and I say this every time, so bear with me, all of my listeners who've heard me say it a million times, but I believe that podcasts exist in the future. Like they will be listened to years and years and years from now. They go way forward in the future. I also believe they have an ability to sort of like fold over like a ribbon of time back on the past, and that we can broadcast messages backwards, that we can send messages to ourselves. And so what I believe is that right here, right now, you and I can send like Telegram or a phone message, like a voicemail, whatever we can, or some kind of a broadcast back to young Francie, and give her a message that she really needs to hear. So the two things I like to ask is, one, what age, like what Francie are we going back to? Where is she? How old is she?
It's always the 9-year-old.
9-year-old Francie. And what does she, if you could speak directly to her and say what she needs to hear, what would you tell her?
Oh, that she's loved and she's worthy and that she's enough. To let her creative side, most of anything, let that creative side just flow out there. Because I wish I was more creative as a child than I am now as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. So you are loved. You are loved. And let that creativity go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. How do people get in touch with you?
Lifewithfrancie.com.
Lifewithfrancie.com, where you will find
the podcast. Yeah, it's just Life with Francie. You can find it in all major platforms as well as my YouTube channel.
Wonderful, wonderful. And on TikTok as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Or you on TikTok.
Yeah. All the social medias are Life with Francie podcast.
Wonderful. Francie, thank you so much for being here. This was such a rich and heartfelt conversation. Thank you for sharing you with us. Yeah.
Thank you. Your questions gave me a different perspective on my life. So it was an honor to be on your podcast.
Oh, I'm so glad.
As we come to the end of this episode, I'd love to hear what you're taking from this show. Please jump over to empathicmasteryshow.com to leave your comments. In the show notes, you'll find a link to grab your copy of my Empathic Safety Guide, 3 Basics for Finding Calm in the Eye of the Storm. And while you're there, please subscribe and follow this show. And thank you for your help sharing this show with the people who need it. Please help me to spread the word and send this podcast to friends or family members who need support living as highly sensitive empathic people. Then join me again when the next Empathic Mastery Show airs. Okay, one last time. Hop over to empathicmasteryshow.com for your Empathic Safety Guide. And until next show, shine on. We need you and your gifts here on this planet. So please don't judge your empathic rainbow by colorblind standards.